Welcome to the Sober and Happy podcast, where we talk about all things recovery related, how to navigate the challenges that we'll face along the way on our journey towards our best lives, and how we could go from living a life of simply just being sober to a life where we're both sober and happy. Today, I want to talk about something that I know many people in recovery struggle with, and that's how to measure success. If you've ever felt like your progress was only defined by the number of days you've been sober, or if you've ever felt discouraged when a slip or a relapse made you feel like all your progress had disappeared, then this episode is for you. Because here's the truth. Sober time is important, but it's not the only thing that matters. And if we're not careful, focusing only on counting days can actually hold us back from experiencing real transformation. So today, we will talk about what it means to celebrate milestones beyond day counts. We'll explore why counting days is both helpful and limiting, the different ways that you could measure progress in recovery, and how shifting your focus can actually make sobriety more rewarding and sustainable. So buckle up. This is going to be a great episode. Welcome back. So let me ask you something. Do you remember the first time someone asked you how long you've been sober and that little surge of pride you felt when you answered? Maybe it was just 3 days, or maybe it was 3 years, but there's something about that number, isn't there? We put so much emphasis on the numbers in recovery. Day counts, months, years, chips, coins, medallions. Don't get me wrong, they matter. When I first got sober, I clung to my sober count like my life depended on it. In a way, it felt like proof that I was doing something right, that I was making progress. And I know I'm not alone in that. Many recovery programs encourage counting days, and there's a reason for that. Early on, seeing those numbers climb could be incredibly motivating. It gives you something tangible to hold on to, something measurable. And let's be honest, in early sobriety, when everything feels uncertain, that number could be a lifeline. There's also the aspect of community recognition. If you've ever been in a recovery group, you know that sober time is a big deal. People celebrate 30 days, 90 days, 1 year, and those milestones could feel like major victories because they are victories. But here's where it gets complicated. The day count could become its own kind of trap. We start believing that that number defines us, that our success in recovery is measured solely by that streak. What began as empowerment slowly transforms into pressure. What happens when you slip after years of sobriety? Does all your progress suddenly vanish? And what about when you reach those big milestones but still feel stuck? I'll never forget the morning of my 5th sober anniversary. I should have been celebrating, right? I had racked up 5 years without a drink, but the truth, I wasn't happy. Despite staying sober all that time, alcohol still had power over me. My life still revolved around not drinking. I was technically sober, but felt stagnant in my recovery and all other areas of my life. And yet, I had convinced myself that if I could just keep stacking up sober years, everything would eventually fall into place. Other people assumed I was doing great because of the time that I had accumulated. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I was exhausted from feeling like I was fighting the same battle every single day. For some reason, though, I thought something would shift that morning, that waking up on my 5-year mark would somehow bring some sort of breakthrough. I'd heard people talk about 5 years being special, like reaching the top of some imaginary mountain where everything suddenly became clear. But nothing changed. I felt exactly the same, and in some ways, that made me feel worse. All my hopes depended on a date, thinking it would fix what I was feeling instead of actually addressing why I felt that way. That's when it hit me. Many of us fall into this trap. We mistake the number on a calendar for progress itself when really it's just one measure. Sobriety isn't about time passing. It's about who are you becoming during that time. So if we're going to look beyond the calendar, what other milestones should we be celebrating? What are the moments that mark real transformation in recovery? For many of us, learning how to deal with our emotions is a huge one. Remember that first time you felt intense anger, sadness, or even joy, and you just felt it without immediately reaching for something to numb it or to amplify it? That's massive. I still remember the first time I got through a full-blown panic attack without hitting the liquor store. I just rode the wave, used the tools that I'd learned, and came out on the other side. That day doesn't have a sobriety coin, but maybe it should. Think about the first time you handled a stressful situation without alcohol. That is a huge milestone. Maybe you used to drink whenever you're overwhelmed, but now you've learned how to pause, breathe, and get through it sober. That's real progress. Or what about the first time you rebuild trust with someone you hurt in active addiction? Maybe it's a family member, a friend, or a coworker. Someone who had every reason not to trust you again, but you've shown up consistently and now they do. That is a huge win. I want to read you a text I got a few years ago from my friend Dan before he died. He wrote, "I want you to know that I don't think it's possible for me to be more proud of someone than I am with what you've managed to do with your life." Now, this is a friend that I screwed over multiple times when I was drinking, including skipping town with our rent money without even leaving a note. Yeah, I was that kind of friend to him. But when I got sober, I was able to stand on his doorstep and take accountability for everything I had done, apologize, and start taking steps to make amends with him. Then for years, I consistently showed up as a friend that he deserved and rebuilt that trust with him, and our friendship grew even stronger than it was ever before. That text he sent me, that means more to me than any anniversary that I could celebrate. Not that anniversaries are not also worth celebrating, but these are the moments that matter the most. I want you to think about the steps you have taken to repair relationships in your life. Could be having that first honest conversation with someone you've hurt, or showing up consistently enough that people start to trust you again. It could be the first time your partner stops checking your eyes or smelling your breath when you had to work late, or the first time your kid looks up at you and says, "Mom, I'm proud of you." Don't take these moments for granted because these are the moments that should be celebrated and remembered. Financial recovery is another one. A lot of us did some pretty serious damage to our finances while drinking. Maybe you finally started paying off credit card debt, paid that friend the $100 you've owed them for years, or maybe you've been able to start saving money for the first time. That's a milestone worth celebrating. Now, health improvements, they can be subtle but profound. Waking up without a hangover starts to become normal pretty quickly. But what about when you notice you're sleeping through the night without cold sweats? When your hands stop shaking? When your doctor says your liver functions are back in the normal range? When you finally have the energy to play with your kids or take that hike you've wanted to go on? Those are all huge milestones that should also be celebrated. There's also the spiritual and psychological growth that happens over time. This might look like finally treating yourself with kindness after years of beating yourself up, learning to forgive yourself for past mistakes, or even finding it in your heart to forgive those who hurt you. It could also be discovering a sense of purpose that has nothing to do with substances, something that gives your life meaning beyond just staying sober. Your social life transforms too, and these changes, they deserve celebration. Remember the first time you hosted a dinner party without liquid courage? Or what about when you went to that wedding and actually danced without a drop of alcohol? There's something powerful about making new friends who only know the real you, not the person you were when you were using. You start building relationships based on true connections instead of just who would tolerate your drinking. And let's not forget about your work life either. Maybe you landed a job after a long employment gap, earned a promotion you never thought was possible, or found the courage to go back to school. These professional wins might seem ordinary to others, but in recovery, they're a big deal and deserve to be celebrated. The point is, if we only focus on the number of days we've been sober, we miss out on all these other incredible ways we're changing. These are the real milestones of recovery. Sobriety time makes them possible, but they're what makes a sobriety time worth it. So how do we start identifying and celebrating these non-traditional milestones? It starts with getting clear about what actually matters to you in recovery. Early on, just not drinking or using is achievement enough. But as you build some time, ask yourself, what do I want from recovery beyond just sobriety? Is it a better relationship, financial stability, mental peace, physical health, spiritual connection? Whatever it is for you, those are the areas you should be looking for milestones. I personally find it helpful to set milestones based on what's most important to you. If rebuilding trust with your family members matters to you, maybe your milestone is being asked to babysit for your niece for the first time since getting sober. If career growth is important, maybe it's applying for jobs you wouldn't have qualified for before. There are some great tools for tracking progress beyond day counts. I love the idea of creating a victory log where you write down your wins, both big and small. Others I know take regular inventories where they reflect on growth across different areas of their life. Many recovery apps are now starting to include features for tracking mood patterns and personal goals, not just sober time. I've become a huge advocate for journaling in recovery. Nothing fancy, even just jotting notes in your phone. It helps you notice the subtle shifts that you might not see otherwise. Looking back at my early recovery journals, I could see how my thinking changed before I was even aware of it. I wasn't always jumping to the worst case scenario as much anymore. My self-compassion increased. I started writing about future plans rather than just trying to make it through the day. Celebrating these milestones don't have to be elaborate. Sometimes just pausing to acknowledge them is powerful. Tell someone who gets it. Buy yourself a small gift that symbolizes the achievement. Take a moment of genuine gratitude. We're so quick to focus on what still needs fixing in recovery that we often rush past these victories. Now, I'm a bit of a science nerd, so I want to talk to you why acknowledging these different types of progress matters on a neurological level. When we're actively addicted, our brains essentially get hijacked. The reward pathways that evolved to help us seek food, shelter, and connection get redirected towards seeking substances. Recovery isn't just about stopping use, it's about rewiring those pathways. Research that has been done on habit formation shows that our brains are incredibly plastic, meaning that they could change and adapt throughout our lives. But these changes happen gradually. Each time you make a healthy choice, you're strengthening new neural pathways. Each time you successfully manage an emotion without substances, you're building new circuitry in your brain. This is why acknowledging small wins is so important. When we celebrate these moments, we're activating the reward centers in our brain in healthy ways, essentially telling our nervous system, hey, this is the good stuff. This is what we want more of. The psychology of celebration, that feeling of pride and accomplishment, helps cement new habits and identity shifts. And here's something fascinating. Studies show that people who view setbacks as temporary rather than permanent are more likely to persist through challenges. So when we measure recovery in multiple ways, not just day counts, we create resilience. If you slip in one area, you could still see progress in others, making it less likely to fall into the what's the point thinking that could lead to a major relapse. As we start to wrap up today, I want to leave you with this thought. Recovery is a constant evolution. It's not a straight line, and it's not measured by just one metric. The beauty of a life in recovery comes from all moments of growth, connection, and presence that substance use once stole from us. So yes, celebrate your sobriety birthday. Get that chip. Mark that milestone. But don't forget to honor the Tuesday afternoon when you felt a craving and called a friend instead of your dealer. Celebrate the morning that you woke up and actually liked the person looking back at you in the mirror. Acknowledge the first time you told your truth and the relief of being truly seen. So here's my challenge for you this week. Start a victory journal. Nothing fancy. Use your phone even. But each day, write down one moment of growth or healing, no matter how small it seems. It could be setting a boundary, processing an emotion in a healthy way, or simply showing up authentically in a situation where you once would have been numbed out. In a month, look back on what you've written. I think you'll be amazed at the person emerging on those pages. Person who's growing in ways that can't be captured by a simple number. Because you are so much more than the number of days you've been sober. You are someone who is changing, who is growing, and who is building a life worth staying sober for. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. If you are, please do me a favor. Grab your phone and text one person who you think might benefit from listening to this episode. That would mean the world to me. New episodes come out each Friday, so I look forward to connecting with you next week. And as always, thank you so much for listening and keep living sober and happy.